So you can go and hire fancy engineers, fancy designers, fancy marketers. Like, it's just out of your budget.
This podcast is brought to you by Hey Taco, the only peer-to-peer recognition platform that uses tacos to help teams around the world share gratitude. I'm Doug.
I'm Una.
This is our podcast, Amazing Teams. Lav, welcome to the Amazing Teams podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Now, I'm going to phone in a friend here because I've been trying to work on your last name all morning, and I don't think I really have it. So I'm going to ask Una to pronounce your last name because I think she has it.
I feel like this is the citizenship test right now. Lav Crnobrnja.
Yes.
Wow.
I still pass. I can keep my passport still. That's good. Lav, so great to have you. So great to have you on the podcast. Tell us more about who you are and what is Vacation Tracker.
So I'm like an entrepreneur. I've been an entrepreneur more or less my whole life. And Vacation Tracker is my third business. Like, we've had like our one successful business before, and we've tried one and we failed at one. So this is our third one, and it's going quite well. And Vacation Tracker is basically a leave management system. So if you want to keep track of who's in and out of the office, if they're on vacation, if they're on having a sick day, if they're on maternity leave, or any other leaves, or working remotely, or any things like that, you would use a tool like Vacation Tracker. And we really specialize just in that. Like, we're not trying to be an HR system. We're really zeroing in on that one particular problem.
And how did you decide you wanted to solve that problem?
Well, we had it internally in our first company. And so we were breaking our heads on the Excel file that we were using, which I think is where most people start when they figure out, like, okay, I have to have a better way of tracking this than just like sending it through emails or going via paper. And so we were using an Excel file like most people do when they get started with this. And eventually, when you're at 10, 15, 20 people, that Excel file becomes very difficult to manage because multiple people are accessing it. And then you don't know who made the update. It's also hard to keep track of things like rollovers. Quotas are also difficult, because then you have to like kind of figure out all the rollovers and see what everybody's quotas are. So it becomes very difficult to manage. And you end up spending so much time just managing that Excel file. And at one point, we just said, well, we're a software development company. We should be able to build a tool for ourselves to use. And we decided to build it directly in Slack, I believe like you guys, because we didn't want our team to have to exit Slack to be able to request vacations or request a sick day, because these are things you don't ask like every week, right? It's usually a couple of times per year. So we didn't want them to have to remember another like username, password, website that they have to go to. So we built it directly in Slack, again, primarily for ourselves, because we were solving our own problem first. And then we released it to the public, and then we realized, oh, wait a second, there's a bunch of other people actually that have the same problem as us, which was actually a bit of a surprise to us. We thought most people would go to HR systems. We didn't think that a lot of people would actually want a point solution like Vacation Tracker, but we were pleasantly surprised to find that actually there's a substantial amount of companies that are looking for point solutions exactly like Vacation Tracker.
How long ago was that when you started the company?
So the first $25 we made was in September of 2019.
Do you have the $25 like taped on the wall somewhere, like your first $25? You know how people have the first dollar taped somewhere?
The first check, yeah. No, I did that in the first company. I had the first check glued to the wall. But this time around, it was difficult because it was a Stripe transaction. But I remember who it is. He's still a customer to this day. So we give him a discount. We reach out to him. We're very respectful towards him. So he's like, we're trying to nurture this customer because he's literally the first customer and like first paying customer. And he's been with us for like the last like 5 years. But actually, we started working on the product about 9 months before that, at the beginning of 2020. It's the beginning of 2019.
So fast forward to today, 2024. I almost forgot what year it was. That was more about the company and your team. Where are you located? How many people? What's the company up to these days?
So the company grew quite a bit over the years. We're 19 people today. And we're spread across two continents, 3 countries. So there's 6 of us in Montreal. There's 1 person in Barcelona, or actually Madrid, and the rest of the team is in Serbia.
So fully remote.
Fully remote. It's something my partner and I have wanted to do for a long time. It was very difficult for us to do that in our first business because of the nature of the business, although we kind of did it because in the first business, it was mandatory to go to the office on Mondays and Thursdays, and the other days were optional. So we had our like 1 foot in this remote world already. And then when the pandemic happened, we were like, this is our opportunity to go fully remote finally. And we're going to go fully remote. and we're not going to like go back to the office. And again, frankly, it was because my partner and I didn't want to do the commute. We didn't want to like have to sit in an office all the time. We figured that getting the team together like once a month, the teams, depending on where they are in Serbia, they get together once a month. Here we get together roughly once a month. And then getting the whole team together once a year was more beneficial, and that people would prefer that over having to basically go to the office 5 times a week or 3 times a week. We just felt that we would prefer that. And so we assumed that the rest of the people, and I think we nailed it on that one, because I think most of the team agrees with us. And that's one thing actually that my partner and I are always saying. We're trying to build a business, like a company like we would want to work in. And so we're also trying to find like-minded people who think along the lines that we think. And I think we found a pretty good team that thinks in a similar way to us when it comes to these things.
Very cool. Can we just touch on you mentioned building Slack first? And yes, that's very similar to my story here at Hey Taco. But can you just talk a little bit more around, like, how did you know that's the playground you wanted to end up in and build on? Kind of curious.
So it was actually an accident, which is, I think a lot of the time these things happen by accident and then they work out. And the reason is Slack was our primary communication tool in our company. And my partner got excited by chatbots. So he started showing me, and then I got excited as well, because it's a little bit contagious when one of us gets excited. And so he started showing me all the stuff that's possible. And then we had this problem, like that I mentioned before, with the Excel file. And then we said, well, how do we solve this problem? And since we were excited about chatbots and like we have this problem, and again, we're thinking about like the team not exiting like the tool that they're using every day, we just said, well, maybe we should build this as a chatbot, again, primarily for ourselves, because we wanted to use it directly inside Slack, because we were like a big Slack user. And then when we opened it up, we said, wow, there's actually a lot of other people that would like benefit from using it directly inside Slack. One of our challenges actually is that people are not aware that you can do this in Slack, which I imagine is probably one of your guys' challenges as well. They're like, I want a tool that tracks leave, but they don't realize that you can actually have a tool that's built directly into Slack and that you can do 90% of it inside Slack. So part of our challenge in the beginning was educating people around this and explaining to them, hey, you can do this directly in Slack. You don't have to keep going to this dashboard. You don't have to keep logging into this new system. You can basically do approvals. You can do requests. You can do all that stuff directly inside Slack. So it was a bit of a challenge for us to educate people. But I think now more and more people are aware of all the stuff that Slack and Microsoft Teams tools can do.
Probably has something to do with the people looking to solve that problem, right? If you're more in the HR people operations, you're not a developer. You don't necessarily think about how do I connect all these cool things and have them play together. You think about how that job used to be done, which is an
Yeah,
HR system or a different platform and stuff. So I think it also
exactly.
comes with the person that is looking to solve that problem.
And we also, in the beginning, had a lot of technology teams because they instantly got it. And so at the beginning, most of our customers were technology teams, but now it's expanded into all types of companies, big and small, and nonprofits, schools, government agencies, like really all types of organizations. But initially, you're right, to your point, it was a bunch of tech companies because they instantly got the value because they were already using some of these Slack tools and they figured that they can benefit from using it directly in Slack.
So your buyer in the early days was probably a CTO or a CEO, is that right? Rather than an HR type person?
Yeah, in the beginning, it was mostly CEOs and COOs and like, but actually, like it relatively quickly evolved into and branched out into other areas. We started realizing probably about after a year later that actually like probably the better person for us to be talking to is the HR department. Because the first group of customers that we had were really small companies. And then when we started having other larger customers and different types of organizations, that's when we realized, okay, wait a second, like maybe the CEO is not really the person that's responsible for this kind of stuff in a bigger company. Like in a small company like ours, I might be the one who's responsible for this kind of stuff. But in a 50, 100, 200 person company, generally it's not the CEO. It's also not the COO. It's probably going to be an HR manager that's going to be responsible. And so we realized that relatively early on, and we started kind of adapting our messaging for these types of customers.
Love to go back to your team. Question: do you have an HR manager, or are you
Mm,
doing all the HR work and things like
So
that?
we don't have one in the company.
Yeah.
We used to have one in our first company,
Uh-huh.
and she's awesome. But we just don't need like a full time like a HR
Uh-huh.
manager. So she helps us out sometimes. She's working at another company, but we've maintained a good relationship. So when we need a little bit of an HR boost, she jumps in to help us out. At some point, we're going to have to get an HR manager, but at this point, it's just we don't feel that it's necessary.
Do you think there's a magic number as to when to hire one? Like 25 employees,
I
15
don't think
employees?
so. I think it happens when it's like when there's a need for one. And
Mhm.
so like things start happening inside of the business, which when you start spending too much time on HR related things,
Mhm.
that's when you're like, okay, like now I think it's justified for me to pay somebody else to do this and to take over all these responsibilities for me and the other people inside of the team that are doing HR stuff. So we kind of spread it around. It's like me, my chief of staff, my partner, and like one or two other people. And so we all kind of take chunks of the HR function. But it's not at a point where it would be like, I don't even think the amount of time we invest in HR right now, I don't think it would even justify a half-time person at this point, at the size that we are.
Doug, sounds like we're a long ways away from needing
Yeah.
an HR person.
But maybe like it depends. Maybe you're going to have some different set of challenges, which may
That's
require
true.
you, for example, if you have a burst of growth, then you might have to hire somebody because you're
Yeah.
going to need somebody for recruiting, right? You can outsource that; it's going to be very expensive, or you can hire somebody internally to help you out, and then they can also take on some of the other HR stuff like employee engagement and all the other stuff that HR people do.
Love, one of the topics you and I talked about when preparing for this was hiring, which kind of connects to, having an HR manager who or recruiter who usually does all the hiring. How did you guys approach hiring early on, and how do you approach hiring right now? You had some really interesting thoughts that I thought would be fun to unpack.
Sure. So when you're getting started, you don't have a lot of money. I mean, unless you're wealthy or like you got a lot of funding, chances are if you're starting out like the way we did and you're bootstrapped, you're very limited with the resources that you have. So you can go and hire fancy engineers, fancy designers, fancy marketers, like it's just out of your budget. And I'm not even sure that like those fancy like marketers and developers and would be the right fit at those early stages of the company. I just think your major constraint is your budget initially. And so you're forced to get the best quality that you can for the least money. And the way we found to do that is to look for what I like to call diamonds in the rough. So it's exceptionally talented people which haven't been given a shot yet, right? Somebody has to open the door for them. There's plenty of those kind of people. Like, and somebody usually gives everybody their first break, right? Even us in our first company and in our second company, we got like somebody gave us our big break, which kind of led us to jump to the next level. And so when it comes to people, that also applies. And so initially, we're always looking for the diamonds in the rough. They might not have been given the opportunity to really like flourish, if I can use that word. And so that's why we like to hire those people and kind of remove the roadblocks for them and kind of guide them a little bit because they do require more guidance than somebody that's more senior and more experienced. So we do have to invest more time. We may have to teach them certain business things that they may not have learned, like how to write emails properly, for example. I know it sounds funny, but if you're early on in your career, you may not understand how to write a professional email. And I use just that one thing as an example because we've spent quite a bit of time teaching people how to write emails properly. And so like it's little things like this that you may have to teach them, but the raw talent comes when they're designing or when they're programming or whatever the skill that they bring to the table is. And so, this was the way that we did it in the first company and in the second company is we were looking for these diamonds in the rough and then we would onboard them and we would like kind of let them work when it comes to whatever their specialty is and then kind of work with them on all the other stuff to try to make them fit into the team. And so this sounds great. And in theory, that totally makes sense to do that. And it does. But the problem is it's not without its risks, right? Because sometimes the diamonds in the rough can have a lot of like other issues, let's call it with like personality, or they don't necessarily fit into the team, or they might not communicate very well. And so you have to be very careful about this kind of stuff. Because generally, I've found that talented people, they need a little bit more guidance, particularly at the start of their career. And they might not want to be guided. They might want to just be like, I'm marching to my own beat, right? And so there is challenges. It doesn't always work out. It's blown up in our faces a couple of times. But overall, I think that's the only feasible strategy when you're starting. I don't see another one. If you really want to move fast, if you want to accomplish a lot, which you have to do in the early days to be able to prove the model, you have to work with talented people. And since you can't afford to hire the expensive talented people, well, that only leaves the option of finding like raw talent, which then you can nurture towards the senior talent, that you would be hiring later on. And so that's how we used to do it in the beginning. When you get a little bit further ahead and you start like making a little bit more money and then, you have a budget now to actually hire more serious people, then we generally tend to kind of shift towards hiring more experienced people. But there too, we're very careful because one of the problems with senior people is that when they become too senior, they become a little bit boxed in, so it's
Mhm.
that like Zen mind, beginner mind quote, right? Like the
Yeah.
beginner's mind has all the possibilities, the expert's mind has few, right? And so that's the thing we have to be careful when we're hiring seniors, is because a lot of the time they have predefined ways of doing things. And when you're doing something innovative, you generally are kind of treading new ground. And so you have to be careful when you're hiring seniors that they're not too boxed in their way of doing things. But generally, hiring seniors is much easier. I'm very good at identifying talent. I don't have a lot of skills in life, but one of the skills I have is actually identifying talent and building teams, which I guess is appropriate why we're doing this podcast. But I do think, once you get in a position of hiring seniors, it becomes a little bit easier, because it's easier to identify that boxed inness than it is to identify some of the possible issues you may have with the diamond in the rough once you bring them on board. So in a nutshell, that's how it is. In the beginning, we're kind of looking for maybe less experienced people, but that are very talented. And then later on, you're actually looking for more experienced people that have more relevant experience and that are actually a good fit for your team, that fit in with that culture that you're building inside of your company.
We have so many questions. Go, Dut. You go first.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah. I'm curious, in the first hire, second hire, third hire, are you looking more for jack of all trades, or are you looking more for someone that's specialized in a category or subject?
So generally, like, it depends what role. If it's a programmer, obviously it's better to have somebody that's focused on programming. If we're hiring somebody for marketing, it's generally more jack of all trades, because there's so many things in marketing and we don't know what's going to work, right? So they have to be agile and flexible. But yeah, I do think that it's a bit of a trap to always hire experts. I generally like to work with people that have a variety of interests, because I think they bring better ideas to the table. They get ideas from the other things that they're doing and they bring them into whatever it is that they're doing. So I generally prefer to work with people that have a wide variety of interests.
From people that you have hired as diamonds in the rough, are there still some of them on your team years later that you were working with?
Yeah. So our marketing manager is somebody that was more junior. And I think she's grown with the company and she's just become incredible and like a real like leader now. And yeah, I think there's one other person on the team, I think, or maybe two others. But yeah, we do stick with them eventually. We do stick with them. And eventually, sometimes for them, maybe this becomes something that they want to grow out of. And I guess for the company as well, because it's not always the same people that are going to get you from point A to point B that are going to get you from point B to point C. But overall, like, I think that most of the people that we had hired, like, they stuck around for quite a while, because the other benefit of doing that is when you give them their first shot, they're very loyal to you after that. They remain quite loyal, and you remain loyal to them as well, because they helped you get to the point, right? So there's a certain bond that happens, I think, that doesn't really happen later on, because it's almost like you went to war together, because building a startup is almost like going to war. And so, like, it creates this like camaraderie that, like, it's difficult to recreate later on when the company's more established and like things are functioning and there's a structure and there's more organization around like functions and things.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes it's a different ball game, right? But those first couple of people, it really creates that strong bond with the team members.
And my second question, because you kind of called it, I mean, you were asking for this question. What makes you so good at identifying talent? I'm just so curious about how would you translate your competence into like conscious competence you can teach?
I don't know. I think it's like I'm good at evaluating attitude, because I think attitude is one of the most important things. Like, you could teach people skills, but you cannot teach them attitude. Attitude is something that's just like, it's there. And it's like, it's very difficult to get somebody to change their attitude, borderline impossible, And so I look for intelligence and attitude. And when there's a good combination of intelligence and attitude, I think that the rest of it you can figure out. But again, figuring out how to identify those is another, like, and I don't have the answer to that. I guess I've developed this skill over time. I've interviewed hundreds of people over the years. I've spoken to hundreds of people. I generally surround myself by smart people and other entrepreneurs. So I get a lot of advice. We compare notes. And so I just think it's a skill that I've developed over time, but I wouldn't be able to precisely tell you how I can identify these things. I've gotten good at it. I guess it's a skill you develop over time.
That's incredible. So at 19 people, are you still actively involved in the hiring process?
I am for some functions,
Got it.
and because we don't have an HR manager. But generally, like, if we're hiring, like, for example, somebody in the product team, it's my partner that's more responsible for leading that. And then if it's on the other side of the business, it's myself. And so, like, that's kind of how we've divided it up. And then somebody from within the team can help us out. And generally, we're the ones who are in charge of HR, yeah. But we don't hire that often. That's why it's okay. because, we're slowly growing. Over 6 years, we've reached like 19 people. So it's like, it's not like we need to be doing HR all the time. In our last company, we got a project, we need 5 people, we got a burst of hiring, and so like this kind of stuff was happening all the time. People were leaving because they were like, the projects were more difficult, and switching around between projects, or a turnover of headcount was more. We have a very low like turnover in vacation tracker, and I understand why. In the other business, they were shifting projects all the time, and and sometimes we're working on multiple projects, and so it was more difficult. So there was more need to have somebody like to manage all that stuff, to keep an eye on what's happening with the team, and then also to like hire all these people that we were needing to hire.
Gotcha. I'm kind of curious around the makeup of your team. Are you developer heavy or product heavy? What does that look like?
So I'll just tell you what the whole team is roughly like. So it's basically 4 product developers and 1 person that works just on our website. We have a product manager. We have 2 quality assurance engineers. We've got 3.5 people working in marketing. The half is somebody that works half time. And we have a salesperson. There's my chief of staff. And am I forgetting anybody? Oh, yeah, of course, the customer support team. And we have 3 people in the customer support team.
All right.
That's roughly the composition. We feel that with like 4 engineers, we're more than okay for a little while. Like, we don't need that kind of product velocity. I think what we need more is like marketing velocity, and also being able to provide excellent customer support. That's one of the things that I absolutely insist on, because I've had so many experiences with terrible customer support, and I've had some with really good customer support. So I always point to my team and I'm like, this is what we need to be like, and not like that. And we're not moving, even though I'm very excited by AI, we're not moving in the direction of making AI do our customer service. Like, we're going to remain human first. We may have it as a first level, but I always want humans to be there to talk to our customers.
Yeah.
The
And I
AI
don't care how good
chatbots
the
are
AI can be and all
terrible.
that. Like, I feel the human touch is, at least for now, is like irreplaceable. And we're going the opposite direction of everybody else when it comes to that.
I hate the AI chatbots. I
Yeah, they're
always
going to
like
get
that.
better, but still, it's like,
So
it's
bad.
just, nothing beats that human touch. It's not just getting to the answer. It's also, I think, the feeling like, okay, this person cares about my problem. That part, the AI is kind of, good luck getting the AI to make you feel like that.
Yeah, exactly. The AI doesn't have feelings, right? Like a
Yeah.
person. I'm very, very strong beliefs around customer first, and Una could probably tell you I'm very customer obsessed, right? I'm kind of curious from you, what's your definition of good customer support?
So we have to answer quickly. We have to do our best to resolve the problem. We always have to be polite and respectful with the customers, even if they're not polite and respectful with us. And so I think we're not always able to resolve the problem. That's the thing, because sometimes the problem is not us. Like, a lot of the time, we get problems because of Microsoft Teams. I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about. I don't want to get into the
No, never
details.
heard of it.
And so it's like a problem on Microsoft side, but it's manifesting itself inside Vacation Tracker. So we have to answer to it, right? But the goal always is for the customer to try to leave happy, right? Even if we didn't necessarily resolve their problem, right? Obviously, the goal is to try to resolve their problem as much as possible. And sometimes, even when it's a problem that's outside of us, we try to resolve that problem. And sometimes we just can't. It's impossible. And so our goal there in those situations is to try to make the customer like exit the interaction happy. That's kind of the main goal.
So, Lav, you've hired all these people. You obviously have strong opinions about different parts of the business, which is good. You're leading these parts of the business. How do you get out of their way?
I have to say that I really learned how to delegate properly during COVID, because I had no choice. I had a gun to my head, and the business was going to collapse if I didn't learn how to delegate better. And the reason is that my son was staying at home, and the daycares were shut down, and he was not able to, and I had to take care of him half the time. And so I just couldn't be there during the business. I was basically running a home daycare like 3.5 days a week. And so, like, I had no choice. Things were not going to get done. I had to figure out a way to delegate. And so, while I thought I was delegating before that, I really learned what delegating means when I hit that like roadblock. And I was like, okay, so either I'm going to pass this on to somebody else, and even if they're not going to do it as well as I would, like, it's not going to get done otherwise. And so let's start, let's start doing that. And then I started fine tuning how to do this properly. And the main thing that I've learned about delegating is, actually, before I say the main thing, so I got better at delegating, and then I was going for a little while, and then some external person came to help our marketing team, and he was like, "Why are they still checking with you all this stuff?" And I was like, I don't know. It didn't register that they were checking with me all this stuff. And then I realized that I'm actually not delegating as well as I thought. And he's the one who actually taught me hold them accountable to the results, not the tactics. Because I was getting too involved with the tactics. I was like, well, why are you doing this? Why aren't you doing it this way? And then they were checking this stuff with me, which is a way of actually shifting responsibility back onto me. Because it's like, oh, well, Lav said it's okay to do that. So we did it and it didn't work, but Lav signed off on it. So it's really Lav's responsibility, right? And so the second that you start going, okay, I'm not going to like, you do what you think is best, but this is the goal, right? And I'm going to hold you accountable to the goal. And I'm going to give you a very clear goal for this month, for the first half of the year, for the second half of the year. And so I'm setting goals for you. And then you figure out how you're going to achieve these goals. And I might throw comments your way about what I think, but it's totally up to you whether you want to like actually work, like do something based on my comments, or if you want to ignore them entirely. But when we get to the end of the year and we're talking about results, you have to explain to me why we did not hit that result. Or if you did hit the result, well, wonderful, then you did exactly the things that you were supposed to do. So this is the main thing that I learned about delegating. It's that you think you're delegating because you're doing stuff. But if you're questioning the stuff they're doing all the time, you're not really delegating. You're still micromanaging to an extent. True delegation is setting goals and then letting them do it the way that you think. And that requires a strong team. It's very difficult to do that with diamonds in the rough, right? It's in the early stages. I think you do need more senior and experienced people to be able to do that, because I think they're really going to bite into it and they're going to take it like very seriously. And it just works significantly better than when you're trying to do it with more junior people who are not sure necessarily the steps they need to take. They question themselves a lot. So that's where experience becomes a real benefit.
I think it's just like with any other skill, there's this concept of task relevant maturity, right? When someone is new to a task, they need more guidance and more coaching and real time
Yes.
feedback, right? And when someone's really adept at a task, they need very little. Whether you're
Yeah.
playing a sport like volleyball, like when you're 10 or 25, there's different guidance and coaching that you give to LeBron James
Yes.
versus a high schooler at the local, community center playing basketball.
Absolutely. And there's one thing I would add to that, and that is confidence. Like, even if they know it, they lack the confidence. And I've learned in the last couple of years how imperative having confidence in the things that you are doing is. Because even if they have the right answer, they're not confident to say it because of lack of experience. They think it's stupid, whatever. But a lot of the time they actually have the right answer. And they're just missing that confidence. And that also comes with time, doing it over and over again, experiencing various things, banging your head into the wall a couple of times. And then you're like, okay, I know that I shouldn't go left. I should go right in these situations. And then you kind of develop some confidence that you know what you're doing, right? And so I think that's another really key component is the confidence that they have in the things that they're doing and they're saying.
That's great. How do people get that confidence? Is that just something that shows up, or are you helping them develop that confidence?
I try to help them. I'm naturally a confident person, and I've developed even more confidence over time as we've been building businesses and having some success and some failures too. So I do try to nurture that. I do try to remind them sometimes, that they do have the answer
Hmm.
and that it's just a matter of getting it out of them. I do actively try to encourage them to have that confidence. It's kind of difficult, at least for somebody from the outside, to get them to have internal confidence, but I try. But I think I try to make it clear, at least for them, how important this aspect is and how important it is for them to develop the confidence in their ideas and the execution of the things that they're working on.
That's great. Lab, this has been great talking with you and learning about your business. Let's talk about gratitude. With
Sure.
Hey Taco, everyone has 5 tacos to give each day, and you can use those tacos to recognize someone for something they've done or to just simply show your appreciation. Who are you giving your 5 tacos to today and why?
So, can I divide up my 5 tacos into three? It's not an exact number, but it's just I have three people off the top of my head that I'm very grateful that I have in my life. And the first one is my wife. She's just incredible, super supportive. I would not be able to do the things that I'm doing if I didn't have her support. And I think that's one of the most important things you can have in life is a stable partner who supports the things that you're doing. And so no questions that I want to give my first set of tacos to her because I don't think I would be able to do the things that I'm doing without her. The second set of tacos would be for my partner because also without him and without all the crazy stuff we haven't been like that we've been through, I don't think like the stuff that we're working on today would even be possible. He's just super patient. I'm a little bit more impulsive and temperamental. He's more the calm one in our partnership. And I appreciate his ability to navigate like certain situations and just bring me down in certain situations and just be like the voice of reason a lot of the time. So I really appreciate him and I'm grateful. We've been working together for 13 years now, going on to 14. So I'm super happy. And, I think that our partnership is really great. And, we're continuing now. We're planning to start another startup together. So he's the second one. And then the third person I want to send some tacos to is our marketing manager, Alexandra, who's the first hire in Vacation Tracker. Let me give it to the first two hires, the Srđan and Alexandra, who were the first really two people to work in Vacation Tracker, who are still with us to this day. And I really want to thank them for their commitment. I'm so grateful how committed they are. I'm surprised they don't have like Vacation Tracker tattoos on their back or something, how the level of commitment that they have shown towards the company. I'm really grateful to have them in the team and that they're still with us to this day. Definitely a couple of tacos for them as well.
That's amazing. Well, Lav, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. It's been great.
Thank you guys for having me. It was really fun to talk to you.
One more question before we go. Doug, can you try pronouncing Lav's name right now? Last name. We won't judge. This is not being recorded at all.
You just want something to laugh at.
Yeah.
I can't even try it.
I'll say it for you. Crnobrnja.
Some num num num.
Almost.
Close enough. Thank you, Lav.
All right. Thank you guys for having me.
Thanks for listening. One of the important things about building a team is gratitude. If you're looking to add more gratitude into your team, check out heytaco.com. We are clearly biased, but it really does work. Use the code AMAZINGTEAMS to receive 15% off for the first 3 months of your subscription.